From the book of Exodus, chapter 2, verse 23. The Israelites, groaning in their slavery, cried out for help, and from the depths of their slavery, their cry came up to God. God heard their groaning. God remembered his covenant with Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. My dear friends, today I'm going to talk about the history of delivery, how God heard, paid attention to the pain of the Israelites, of these people, and how he delivered them. We have this story in the book of Exodus, as you know so very well. And before continuing, I would like to say that the reason we always come back to these stories, it is because they are not just stories. When you read a novel, usually we only read them once. Maybe if the novel is very good, after some years, twice. I remember I read the wonderful novel La Regenta. It's one of the classics, in Spanish. And then after several years, I came back and I read it again, and I really enjoy. But it is not that I will read the story or the book of La Regenta every year, not even every 5 years. But the very interesting thing is that the people of Israel, the Israelites, and also the Christians, we read these stories again and again, non-stopping, regularly, on a regular basis. And why is that? And as I said before, because they are not just stories. Although the style, we can talk about that, the style is a narration, like a history, somehow record, but they are absolutely more than that. They provide meaning. They provide deep understanding. Actually, the events that are written here, are narrated here, happened many years ago, more or less, in the 14th century BC, before Christ. 14th century before Christ. And then all these stories, these events, they were, transmitted verbally, orally, from generation to generation. Of course, some of them, maybe they were written down. And then, eventually, all these stories were collected. And several editions happened. And the last edition, more or less, could have happened in the 6th century BC. That means that from the beginning until they were put into the final edition, 8 centuries happened. Why? Why in the 6th century BC, all these stories, were written? Not just because the writer or the last editor wanted to publish it and get a prize, but because he wanted to encourage the people of God at that particular time in the 6th century. He wanted to give them back their call, their mission, their vocation, provide their identity. And that is why today, in the 21st century, Anno Domini, we still go back to these stories because they have a lot to tell you and I. Because they are so far away, so remote, when we read them, we may find them distant, or even obscure, dark, I don't know, difficult to relate to our lives. And this is the purpose of this talk, you know. Try to show how in these stories there is a lot of truth, a lot of insight, a lot of wisdom for you and I. The first thing is that God is not deaf, is not blind to what is happening to you and I. God listens. And because God listens, He wants to deliver. That word is so important, deliver, make us free. So salvation equals to deliverance. Salvation equals to deliverance. In the case of the people of Israel, they were slaves. Where were they slaves? Where? Everybody knows the answer. They were slaves in Egypt. So Egypt is a place, is a nation, is a geographical place. But actually it's also a symbol. It represents a lot. What was, or what does Egypt represent? In the Bible, Egypt represents salvation. Exactly. Strange as it may seem, Egypt represents salvation. Salvation basically from starvation. When there was no food, when there was famine all around the world, everybody knew that if you go to Egypt, there will be food. And the reason is because of the Nile. Someone said that Egypt is the miracle of the Nile, because the Nile had regular floodings, so that the area around the banks of the river could be covered with a very fertile limus, and wheat was always produced in abundance. So Egypt was always full of food. And then, as you know the story, Jacob and his sons, they went there looking for food. But eventually, what is the promise of salvation becomes also your trap, your prison. We are going to read these stories not just as looking for fun or for information or entertainment, but looking for enlightenment. And we need to apply these stories into our lives. So at this particular moment, it's so important that we ask ourselves, what is my Egypt? What is my Egypt? In previous talks, we have been talking about how human desire is so strong. We are not just animals. We need to satisfy our deepest desires, and looking for our desires, and ultimately for the one who can satisfy our desires, but we don't know that. So we look for the satisfaction of our desires where? In substitutes. So you may think that you have a good career, you will be happy, you will be free. That is your Egypt. I remember a friend of mine who told me how devoted, he was to his job, and how he spent not only the ordinary hours, but way much more, even holidays, devoted to his job. And how important his job was for him, and he kept on saying that again and again. And then I casually told him, don't you think that it is too much? Your devotion for the job, don't you think that you should, downplay it a little bit and put your energy somewhere else? And then he answered me, I cannot do that. It is way too important for me. So for this person, his job was his Egypt. And then, but the point is that Egypt and the king of Egypt, the Pharaoh, they don't care about you. And this person, his Egypt and his Pharaoh, they didn't care about him. So one day he was just found redundant and was just laid off. And you can imagine how desolate was this person, you know. So either in the job or even in the family, you know, it is okay to love your family, but when the family becomes, you know, your center of adoration, when all your expectations, you know, are in your family, all your desire is there, it also may become your Egypt, you know, and eventually can be also your trap, because you think that your family is going to save you or give you freedom or give you liberation. Maybe it's the other way around. Relationships, you know. Some people may think, if I only find Mr. Right or Miss Right, you know, if I only find him, all my problems will be solved. Then, you know, my wrinkles will disappear, my sadness will be gone, all my problems will disappear if I just find Mr. Right or Miss Right. And then, if you are lucky enough or unlucky enough to find Mr. or Miss Right, then you will go down all the way to Egypt. And then in Egypt, you will expect the full satisfaction of your deepest desires, and then you will be trapped. And then if for whatever reason that relationship doesn't work out the way you expected, you will feel, you can imagine, disappointed, hurt, despondent, lost. So this is Egypt. You go there with the innocence, the eagerness, the desire to be happy, and then you are trapped. And eventually the Pharaoh, the Lord, who promised you food, eventually becomes your tyrant, becomes your tyrant, your oppressor, and then will oppress you in a way that is beyond description. Of course, the clearest, you know, example of this oppression, the clearest are the addictions. That is the obvious way. Addiction either to drinking alcohol, drugs, gambling, sex, even work. That is the obvious way. But without going so far, we can see that whenever, you know, we put all our expectations, you know, in any other thing, that becomes our Egypt. And then, if you know, you can realize how desperate you are, how sad you are, how deep is your pain, and then cry to the Lord. That is the principle of salvation. In one of the books I read, there was this short statement, you know, that touched me very much. Hell, to be in hell, is not even know that you are lost. So it is the condition where you are just floating in the world, you know, but you don't experience sharp pain. So it's interesting, you know, how in this journey, the awareness of sadness, of pain, of distress, disappointment is going to be our first ally. something similar is what the Buddha said. Life is suffering. Life is not fun. So the awareness of suffering is the first step in the path of freedom and in the path of liberation. So my dear, what I'm going to tell you is not romantic, but is the truth. Not romantic, but the truth. If you are in pain, if you are suffering, if you feel that you are in a condition of slavery, a part of you, full of hope, should rejoice, because the promise of liberation is with you. And this is a promise that God started, and then back that day, He chose a man called Moses, a man we know very well. How did God meet with Moses? It is a very interesting, episode, the episode of the burning bush. It is written in chapter 3 of the book of Exodus. It says that the angel of Yahweh appeared to him in a flame blazing from the middle of the bush. Moses looked. There was the bush blazing, but the bush was not being burned up. And then Moses said, I must go across and see this strange sight, and why the bush is not being burned up. When Yahweh saw him going across to look, God called to him from the middle of the bush. Moses, Moses, he said. Here I am, he replied. Come no nearer, he said. Take off your sandals, for the place where you are standing is holy ground. I am the God of your ancestors, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob. At this very moment, Moses covered his face, for he was afraid to look at God. And then Yahweh said, I have indeed seen the misery of my people in Egypt. I have heard them crying for help on account of their taskmasters. Yes, I am well aware of their sufferings, and I have come down to rescue them from the clutches of the Egyptians and bring them up out of that country, to a country rich and broad, to a country flowing with milk and honey. Beautiful, very interesting, many interesting things we can find here. When we look and when we read the Bible, actually there are different layers of meaning. One is the most practical or the most literal, okay? But behind this literal level or literal sense, there are other layers, Some interpreters of the Bible, they say that the bush has a very interesting meaning. As you can understand, a bush is a very humble plant, not even a tree. A very small, very, very, very small tree. And on this tree there is blazing fire. So this is the reality, Both things combine together and unite somehow. The small bush, the very small tree, and the fire. Those interpreters of the Bible, they can see here that the combination of both things represent, on one hand, the humility of the people of God, even the humility of Mary, and even the humility of the humanity of Jesus. We can even put ourselves there, the humility of the church, even our own humility, the bush. And then, imagine, in this bush, in this humility, there is something amazing, fire. And fire here represents God, represents divinity. In many occasions in the book of Exodus says that God was present as a pillar of fire, and even that the Lord descended upon the Mount Sinai in fire. So God is fire, burning fire, So very beautiful, this image. The humility of the bush, you and I, the people of Israel, even Jesus, even Mary, and then the presence of the Lord, fire. Another beautiful thing is the symbol of holy ground. You are standing on holy ground, so remove your sandals. Powerful, the meaning here. That means that when we are in the presence of the Lord, we experience something like awe, holy fear. This is a holy feeling. It's not just being afraid. It's not just being terrified. It's awe. It's the feeling that we are facing something holy, something sacred. And then all of a sudden, we experience our nothingness. We feel humble. And this is the right attitude. That is why in many pictures, we can see that the faces of the angel are like bowing down, like in expressing modesty, simplicity, fear. That is very beautiful feeling. In the presence of the Lord, because the Lord is awesome. In the Bible, it is also said that the Lord is terrible. But this terror is not meant, to make us tremble, but rather feeling, afraid in the fear of holiness. Holy fear. Beautiful. So when God approaches us, if we experience this holy fear, this is the most holy and appropriate feeling. Then Moses, starts a conversation with God, and then Moses asks the Lord, Lord, if I go to the Israelites and say to them, the God of your ancestors has sent me to you, and they ask me, what is his name? What am I going to say? And then God replied, very interesting, I am he who is. That is what you are going to tell the Israelites. I am has sent me to you. This is the revelation of the name of God, that for the Israelites is so important, In that particular culture, name is not just a label. It's not just a tag that you can put or remove and change for another one, Here in Hong Kong, it is funny, because people change names. They have their Chinese name. But then when it comes to the English name, they may change. And you may find very funny names. I remember one of my students, her English name was Fish. So you can imagine my surprise, when her name was Fish. And exactly this, it's just labels, and then for them it's funny, that's it. But not for the for the people of Israel, not at all. The name equals to the person. So to utter, to say the name is like, asking the whole person to come. So to disgrace the name equals to disgrace the person. To honor the name is like honoring the person. If you want to know the person, you must know the name. That is why the demand of Moses makes very much sense. What is your name? And then God replied in a way that is a little bit confusing, because his response could be like, I am who I am. I am who I am. Like, I don't want to tell you by real name. But eventually, he declared his name. I am. The experts on the Bible, they say that this expression, I am, is a very primitive form of the verb to be. You may know that this expression is the name Yahweh. Actually, in Hebrew there are 4 letters, and that is why it's called the tetragrammaton, 4 letters, Yahweh. It's amazing. It's very interesting because this name, Yahweh, because it is so holy, so sacred, cannot be used. That is why they will use another ways, Jehovah, Elohim, even the presence. And Yahweh is reserved to be said, to be uttered, to be pronounced just by the holy priest, by the high priest, only once a year, when in the day of Yom Kippur he goes into the Holy of Holies. He is the only one once a year who can say the name Yahweh. The rest cannot, otherwise it will be a blasphemy, a terrible sin. It's very interesting that God reveals his name as the one who is going to be with you. I'm going to be with you. I will be there. I will be present. But for us as Christians, the fulfillment of this expression, Yahweh, I am the one who is going to be with you, the fulfillment of this expression, Yahweh, is Jesus. Jesus. He is the great I am. And in the Gospel of St. John especially, there are many occasions when Jesus on purpose uses this expression, I am. In chapter 8, verse 28, Jesus said, when you have lifted up the Son of Man, then you will know that I am. Then you will know that I am. And something even more interesting, that when Moses asked God, what is your name? God replied, I am, and then stop. And then stop. It is like when we are in a conversation, talking over the phone, and then all of a sudden, the service is interrupted. So you are saying something and then cut. And then you need to restart the conversation, call again, Something like that. God is talking, I am, stopped. So something is missing. And very interestingly, this something missing. So the whole sentence, the completion of this sentence, I am what? What I am, comes in Jesus. Jesus said, I am the good shepherd. I am the bread of life. I am the true vine. I am the way, the truth, and the life. So, in the old days, God did reveal himself to Moses, to the people of Israel, but the revelation is not complete. I am. But what? What are you? Who are you? But in Jesus, thanks be to God, we have the whole revelation. I am. What are you? I am the way. I am the truth. And I am the life. Glory be to the Lord. Hallelujah.